but you know I love you. Peter's personality and Peter's denial also became Peter's opportunity to see Jesus after he had risen from the dead. If there's anyone in Peter's personality, he would have been the one who stepped forward and said, he's not telling the truth. And he'd have thought about it later. He's the same one that when they saw Jesus walk on water, Jesus, let me go out and walk on water with you. And Jesus said, come on out, Peter. Now we laughed at Peter, but guess what? He did walk on water. He was one of the only ones that could say, I walked on water. Even though we talk about the fact that he sank and he did that, took his eyes off of Jesus, and we hear that story over and over again, but guess what? Peter walked on water. Yes, he did. That was his personality. Him and James, him and John come to the tomb. John is careful. He looks into the tomb. What does Peter do? His personality. He gonna run in there. That's just Peter. He'd be the kind of person that if he saw a sign and said, do not enter, Peter said, I'm going in anyway. He go in and then there's another sign, high voltage. He in it now. That's just Peter's personality. That's just the kind of guy he was. And notice that Paul mentions he appeared to Peter. Notice the second group of people, persons that he appeared to, verse 5, and that he was seen of Cephas and then of the 12. Now, if you and I have studied the 12, you know that this was not a stereotypical group. This group was made up of fishermen and tax collectors and zealots and all kinds of people. And you remember the story, they even had a person that I would call who's an apologetic disciple, because he's not going to believe this unless he sees it with his own eyes. And you all know his name. What is his name? His name is Thomas. But when he's speaking of the 12, he's speaking of the original group. That is Peter and Andrew and James and John and Philip and Bartholomew and Thomas and Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus and Lebbaeus, who is called Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot. This group of 12. The number is always 12. They're even referred to as the 12 even after Judas hangs himself and he's off the scene. They are a group of 12. They represent the original disciples that Jesus has called. And they're filled with all kinds of personalities. Would not be the people that you and I will choose on our team. They didn't have a lot of clout in society. They were just ordinary men who were able to do extraordinary things. Haven't you found out that that's what God said? Not many mighty are called. God wants to confound people. So he chooses the weak things of the world to confound the things that are strong. He chooses base things to confound the things that are high and mighty. That's God's choosing. He chose 12. And one of them in a group is an apologetic disciple. He just simply is not going to believe. So Jesus comes to the 12 and he shows up and he comes into the room and here they are. Thomas is not there, and they come back and they say, Thomas, we've seen Jesus. He says, except I put my hands in the nail prints, except I can put my hand in the piercings, I will not believe. And Jesus comes, does he not? Thomas is able to put his hands in Jesus' handprints, footprints, and he's able to touch his side, and evidently that even in the resurrection body, that for all eternity the markings will be there. In fact, if someone asks you a question and says, is there anything man-made in heaven? Yes. The nail prints in his hands, piercing in the side. Those will be indelible marks for all eternity. John sees him in the Revelation. He says, and I looked at him as though he had been pierced. He said, I saw one as though he had been slain. Those marks remain even in the resurrection body to be an eternal reminder of what Jesus did for all of us on the cross. When Thomas sees him, he says,